All right, Mr. Nathan Curtis, hello.
Hello, Brad. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's dig into it. What has you waking up excited these days?
How my professional life has changed over like the last 2 years, just the way that our whole field is doing design systems different. And I feel really empowered to build things a lot more. And so I've been building stuff and architecting stuff more. I sort of drifted from the team leader, driving design system success, like organizing the whole mission into like strict architecture and building tools. And it's been a lot of fun to continue to live on the edge between designer and engineer in our space.
Wow. You just went through a metamorphosis of such where you've been in the weeds working in a certain capacity for a really long time. And you're taking that all of that hard-earned experience and now moving it to a different place or wielding that or pointing it in a different direction.
The fact that our tools are in a place and our technology, particularly with AI, is in a place to build and realize ideas so much faster and connect dots and make things so much faster has me really invigorated to make those things.
That's wild to hear from you. That's wild to hear from you.
Why?
Well, we need to go here, but it's empowering, but also as people who really care about, quality and consistency and like all of like that stuff, what a giant mess it can make as well. So we should go there. But I love to hear that you're excited about this, that you feel empowered to move into a totally new role. Like, are you nervous about that? Or do you feel like even though it's like a new chapter?
I don't think so. There's a number of things. Like my world is, particularly the last 3 years, is building tools to communicate design intent through to engineering to make component libraries. And so like the specs tools, as it were, really have taken a different shape, and the kinds of customers and consumers of the data have taken a different shape. But I'm like, the confidence thing is, it's still riffing on a lot of the patterns and building blocks that I already had in my head. And at times it's forcing me to be more deliberate and explicit, and often through that journey exploring where I actually didn't understand it quite as well as I thought I did. And so that's humbling, but that doesn't make me but the other thing is, it's enabling me to really spring or break through borders that I have never like thought to spring through, because capability wise or tool wise or just time wise, I couldn't put those pieces together fast. And that is really exciting to me.
I love to hear it. That's so cool. It sounds like you feel like you could do more effective work at the right layer because you're not having to repeat yourself. It's like you are this is design. You're describing design systems at a career level.
I mean, even there are places to grow. Like I've been in this career while I've been doing design systems for 20, 25 years, the concepts of design systems for that long.
What year did for the good people who don't go all the way back, like what year was your book on component driven design?
Yeah, like my book, Modular Web Design, was published in 2009.
2009, everybody, 2009.
So it included 2 parts, and it still mirrors who I am today. The first half of the book was about how to decompose design into smaller parts. I didn't call it atomic design, but it was effectively the same kind of ideas. And the second half of the book was like, okay, you've got a library. How do you run it? How do you govern it? How do you document it? How do you like deal with like these features and decompose things that you're reusing? And so that was 2009. My first formal design system I worked on was 2006 at Sun, sun.com. And so that's where my formal journey from being an information architect, just making experiences, into really working in design systems happened.
It's incredible. And you are here in the year 2026 saying, I feel invigorated.
Yeah. Like, I mean, one axis that you could look at it as, like, I feel like I've mapped visual styling, UI structure, props, and configuration, and so on, but I'm still challenged by concepts in composition. And, slots and Figma is just like one little stepping stone, getting people towards that. And another thing is, like, I'm now working on how to incorporate motion into design systems more. And that's never a challenge that I've tackled. And so there are concepts in motion that are completely foreign to me, but I'm learning an entire new space, and that's a lot of fun. And I think that mirrors like what AI unlocks for people, because now we can scale and differentiate and explore territory in design systems that, frankly, 97% of design systems don't do motion, barely, if at all. Like they have maybe their button scales when you press on it, like kind of thing. But like, as you're thinking about the choreography of different pieces and you're thinking about different kinds of springs and what they mean, and like, that's all new to me. And I think that's new to a lot of people in systems. And being able to use AI is now starting to unlock a lot of those doors.
That's one of the things that I want to get at this with you. Have you been hearing people, design system teams specifically, feeling threatened by this moment and like, what's this doing? Or wait, no, this is taking away. I'm the one that makes the buttons and sweats those details. And like, I think what you're describing is what can happen when you're free from that. Just kind of, that's a means to an end, right? I usually talk about this through the lens of respect, right? It's like, what's like a respectful use of someone's time, talents, and abilities? Like, is it the sweating the border radius values? Like, obviously, like, you need that to be sound, whatever that value is, but it's like, is that the best thing to be having to do again and again, or sort of dwelling there? Or are there areas like motion, or just frankly, the next generation of UX, for instance, is like, there's all of these places that is maybe a more fertile and more respectful use of people's time than just kind of having them compare, holding up design, holding up code and saying, are these things the same? Which is what we have been doing for like a freaking decade.
Well, first of all, I'll say it would be naive for people in this moment to not feel threat. There are companies that are undergoing massive amounts of change and are making a lot of, triggering a lot of that change based on assumptions, instinct, guessing. And so, you have these mass layoffs, you have the teams morphing how they're doing their work. And it's because we're all in this space where we're just trying to understand the lay of the land. And some of those layoffs probably are premature. I think there are a lot of teams that are, let's say, swinging too far into adopting all the new tools and not understanding what they're leaving behind from the tools they have that still do what they need to do better.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about craft and sweating the details of a border radius, like, I do see that teams that are already mature, most of the teams I tend to work with happen to have larger enterprise level design systems. I'm biased towards design systems that are multi-platform as opposed to just single platform. So like, all the stuff I say carries certain biases, but they already have mastery of a lot of those things. They're still undergoing change on what those things are. They're still rethinking, well, how should we prescribe an intent via the tone of the button in certain visual ways, and using characteristics now? Are they using shadows more? Are they using sophisticated gradients as outlines of borders, like
Right.
borders to buttons? Like, yes, they're doing more sophisticated things because the tooling's enabling them to do that. And so the sophistication of expression is increasing, but the need to decide things, the need to record things and implement those things and verify that you've implemented those things haven't changed. And we're still, I think, years away from all of that stuff just going from a of design intent by someone who doesn't understand systems, and then they get what they want on the other side, including all the systematic choices and architecture underneath. Like, I don't think anybody should be threatened by that in the immediate term. And if you're removing systems because you want to make those choices, that's not a change because of AI. That's a rejection of system thinking.
Yeah. And I think you're going to find a lot of people finding out the hard way as they kind of go down these roads and eventually go, man, we're out here kicking up a bunch of dust. We have a bunch of similar but different things. And who the hell made this one that's floating out here and getting us sued or whatever. And I think that you're right. It's like so long as the concept of a company or an organization where you're trying to organize more than one person to go, we're going to go here and not here. Like, so long as there's still groups of people who are operating as a group, there's going to need to be the ability to have agreement, to make decisions, like to share things. We do this and we don't do this, and we need to do that work of figuring out where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to build. That's the part that is just like so long. This is why things like vibe coding and all of that is like, I think that there's this like pent up, oh my God, like I could just do whatever I want and this is awesome. And in many respects, it does get to like, well, what does that mean for the shape of companies long term and like all of that? You could go macro level economics there if we want to, but also so long you're still going to have companies, groups of people who are all trying to coordinate, orchestrate, make something happen. And when you arrive at, oh, we all can't just vibe coder ourselves into these 7 different directions. We all need to have an agreement. And where do you store that agreement? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, thinking metaphorically, I see a lot of across multiple teams that I'm working with. It's as if we've created these behaviors to align on a shared understanding of where we're going. And it's like we're always, we're like together, individually orbiting that shared space. But like the speed of AI like makes you feel so empowered, and you can start solving more problems, and you can start going so much faster that it triggers the risk of you're just going to escape velocity that orbit, and you're going to go not just towards another planet, but a whole nother solar system. And I do see people like exiting like that from the collaborative space that others are on. I haven't seen this person in a while, or why are they even doing it this way? I guess we need to do it another way. And suddenly the collaborative glue that was holding us together, or the gravity, I guess in my metaphor, that was holding us together. And that's, AI is not necessarily, that's not a solution. That's not, you're creating problems that you need to solve rather than solving problems that you had.
Yeah, it's an interesting lens. I think the story you just told is such a testament to the fact that this is a general purpose technology. And I think that this is the thing that we are in a collective moment of trying to understand what that actually means, because what you just described is a real phenomenon that's happening. And then also,
people are just going all the different directions.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing is another application of it, which is we can take a diverse group of people on a phone call, on a call like this, and kind of go through, here's what I'm concerned about, here's what my goals are, here's what my values are, here's what I'm seeing over here. And to bring all of that together. And historically we'd be like, wow, that's a great meeting. And now we're actually able to like act on that stuff. So the stuff is actually like this glue that's actually moving everybody closer together. Or I'm taking my own product work, and I'm firing off GitHub issues and pull requests to multiple repositories that I have access to at the same time, and they're all cross-linked, and so it's like there's this, oh wow, you can use this to like a bunch of people are just gonna go off to the races and like never be seen again, or chart their own paths and systems be damned. And that very same technology could be used to kind of bring people closer together and collaborate more closely and create shared understanding and shared, like agreement and all of that stuff. It's like really fascinating.
I was just on a call this morning with let's call it the design lead of one of the design systems teams that I'm working with. And we had an agenda for a half an hour, and it was just like all the different areas that are creating separation. Do we need multiple Figma files? Because now we have too many collaborators in the same one. Do we need to, you now have collaborators creating patterns and view templates that they never created before amid all their components that they have. How do we bring those together? Oh, we have people making a prototyping toolkit that is beside Figma and a different way of expressing design. How do we keep those things together? And it was just, you look at everything that we talked about, and it was really, how do we sustain the gravity to align these things and keep us all orbiting those as different people build different parts of the bigger system?
Yeah. What do you feel, because that brings up a really important tension that we've always seen, which is here's the pattern police, and here's the standards, and here's the people who are the wet blankets coming in to thwart creativity and invention and stuff. So like given what you just said, how do you see those kinds of attitudes, which have never, like there's a caricaturized version of that pattern police, but we've also seen a fair amount of it where it's just like, this is the right way and this is the wrong way. And you just described quite well this pull or all of this new, like what does that mean for the literal DNA of what a design system needs to be?
Yeah, like I know Ben Callahan, who we both know, talks a lot about culture, but I think
Who's that
this
guy?
is who's Ben? No, Ben's great. Um, but there's a dimension of the culture in which the design system exists. You could look at it as a scale of flexibility or autonomy or the ability to be creative and innovate, however you want to depict that, versus being strictly governed and having closed sets of choices that you shouldn't expand beyond. And things like AI, things like prototype, things moving out of Figma into prototyping where you can really express more quickly divergent things. Even within Figma's the slots capability. I see some teams adapting to that and shifting along that scale to become more flexible. I see other design system teams that I work with, people are writing about those slots are too open. Like it actually created more problems than it solved because now people can, oh my God, put whatever they want in a card and we don't want them to do that. And I'm like, oh my God, we totally want them to do that. Like it challenges the culture of permissiveness that a system has. And some design systems will hold on tighter to that than others. Each has trade-offs, each have good and bad points, each have reasons for being on that point in the spectrum that they are.
But I think that the people who skew more towards the lock it down terrain are going to have a harder time these days. That's my prediction. Not saying that there isn't validity to it or continued validity to just being like, no, you need to use the stuff as is. But I do think that you have a much bigger battle than just yelling at three teams.
Yeah, I don't want to live in that space at all. Like being pattern police and being a strict governor. And we used to call this with one of our stakeholders, the no storm, like instead of snowstorm. They're just a no storm. No, can't do all these things. We're like, oh my God, I can't work like that. But I can imagine a future where there is a large corporation that has a very strong brand and they're going through a rebrand that is going to change very specific yet fundamental aspects of their visual foundation. Wouldn't it be great if everyone else had implemented that entire component library and system that they had in a manner that all they had to do was centrally change a few things and they essentially imprint that new choice across a wide swath of territory because they had a more closed system? There is absolutely business value in that. At the consequences of other things for sure, but brand consistency, rate of change of a major change, all those things are positive consequences that people look for out of a system.
Yeah. I think that there's certainly something to that, and that's certainly been the reason why we're like, we want you to be like actually connected to our system. You download the new version of the package, you get the new brand, or you download you get this and you get all this stuff for free. I do think that this moment is very fascinating. And again, it's a very double-edged sword because in one respect, installing that package and using that thing and putting these tokens in, like that is, you could hang your hat on that. And what I'm seeing is this new emerging non-deterministic way of arriving at, it's not the same place, but gesturally speaking, is it indistinguishable? Yes, in this current moment, but like it's also kind of inventive, or like it captures the spirit of something, of a visual language, of brand expression, of stuff like that, but it's just arrived at a brand new and totally different way. And so that like you lock down the system, you create these connections, and this is the pipeline of how you evolve a visual language through software over time. And all of a sudden, like it seems like this like new way is kind of being born that does not follow that same pipeline, and that could be bad in certain respects, but it's also very interesting in other respects where it's just like, oh yeah, here's this like internal tool that sucks, and it's going to be a giant pain in the butt to adopt
So
the system directly. It's like, I don't know, just say like, here's the brief, go ahead and turn it into our thing rather than this old crappy thing.
you talked through a number of different sort of dimensions of that, but one of them was the precision that you get out of determinism. And like this, I feel like I'm in this mind-bending place with AI because it's all predictive. Like for those that don't know, I have a master's degree in statistics. And so I am all about predictive models. I am all about understanding variation and understanding a degree of precision. We call it like p-value is a degree of precision in statistics. And you want a p-value of 0.01 or 0.05, which means like, okay, you're pretty convinced that this is good enough. And I see that kind of playing out, like you talked about, like coming from a non-deterministic place and delivering our designs in a way that are indistinguishably good enough. And I think there's validity to that. There's speed to that. But I'm also a math guy. I have a degree in mathematics as an undergrad, as well as statistics too. And math is the study of truth. Math is the study of precision, things you can prove. And so I got a real problem with people creating agentic tools that give away precision that is easily achieved. So if I have a bunch of design intent and I know all the choices that we made and they can be all enumerated and very specific, and it costs you nothing. Why would you use an agent to crawl a Figma file, spend 150,000 tokens, and at the end of it, provably hallucinate, overconfidently make some other decisions that are in contrast to the exact things you just crawled, and frankly, miss a lot of signals because you're looking in a sea of data to try and find where the signals are, and you miss those things.
Yeah.
So why would you use predictive models to do something less precise that costs more money and takes 20 minutes when you can do something in 30 seconds that is mathematically verifiably proven to be the right answer? That's me getting on a little rant, but it gets at these two extremes of how you think about using AI.
Yep.
And I am not willing to be an AI maximalist, to use it for everything, when we still have better things that we can use to solve some of the problems. Without a doubt, AI helps you solve so many other problems and solve problems you would never thought about actually solving before because you didn't have the capability. So this isn't to say AI is wrong, but I wouldn't use it for everything when you have better tools.
When all you have is a hammer. That makes a ton of sense. I'm very curious to hear your answer to your question, which is, why do you think people are doing that?
Because they're being told to. Or, like, this is going to sound unbelievably arrogant and self-righteous. Because, like, this actually goes back to design system fundamentals. They have aversion to tools they didn't build themselves because they don't understand necessarily how they work. To them, they might be a black box. To them, they might be complicated enough, or their intent, the tool's intent, not communicated clearly enough. They can't come to a point where they say, that's a good fit for me. And you know what? That's okay. Like, I don't know how to like do brain surgery. I'm not necessarily going to go and cut open somebody's head either, but like, I don't know how to do that. And I'm not going to necessarily try to learn all the tools to do that. But I don't know if that's a good metaphor. That might be a really crappy one. But the point being, like, I need to approach these things with an aspect of humility, because even the tools that I build, that frankly to other people that are teammates, sometimes feel like a black box. It's too much for some of my teammates. But other teammates are like, oh my gosh, I just saw all the wrong things I did because I ran it through that tool. Okay, great. Let's correct them. Let's be better. Let's improve. Let's use it to iterate, that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Like, I guess I just see a lot of people feeling like the future needs to be maximized in terms of its agentic workflow to minimize or remove the human aspects of making choices at the expense sometimes of actually tools that we can build that don't require agents at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting lens. I do think that your initial answer of we're being told to, I also think that there's flipping that on its head. I think that there is a a moment of curiosity and exploration that people, even people who have come from more of a structured appreciation of, the other way of doing things. And it's like, here's this. What happens if we do it this way? That's an interesting place as well, because that kind of curiosity and exploration feels good, but of course there's risk with that. And then I also think, just from a brass tacks perspective, and this is like really coming true for me, is the ergonomics of it, the UX of it. Like, I have ADHD, and going through and having to change out of a context in order to do something. Like, I'm like really finding a lot of value as I'm like, I want you to, I'm looking at a singular thing, and I want you to go update the Notion task, update the GitHub repo, change my branch, move over here, create a folder, do this thing, and I'm going to like be talking all the while, and I'm able to be like locked in. And so it's very interesting, because you can design these things, even though it's just like a flat interface now. You can basically say, my instruction is the same as like saying, hey, Google, turn on the lights. It's like, hey, Google, go run the specs workflow, or hey, go run this deterministic process. That is, I think, a place where I would like to get to, is where that stuff is interpreted as such faithfully and reliably. Yeah. It's like, how do you design the experience of this so that we get the best values of this like non-deterministic weird prediction machine, and the best values, the best parts of deterministic workflows and things that is like, I always want 2 and 2 to equal 4, and I want to run it through this formula always to arrive at that. Like, please don't make 2 and 2 equal 7. Like don't go and invent that. Use this thing. This is the math part. I love how you said it. Like, you, like, through your degrees, you have this like very interesting perspective on
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde-ish kind of thing sometimes. But
do you actually feel like you're like switching between those modes, like in real time, like in a meeting or something?
I mean, ultimately, I'm a stats guy. I love dealing in the nuance of the variation and the lack of certainty that we have with things. I find that that brings out the best in me. It makes me more curious. It makes me more humble and more willing to understand that what I thought was truth actually wasn't. It was just a bias that I had. So I'm at the heart a stats guy, but I'm still a guy that's going to pick math when math is relevant, until it gets proven that, oh my gosh, we need to go quantum with something, and then I don't know what the hell quantum physics is. So the thing I was thinking about when you were describing your experience was sometimes how to control the conversation, because there are opus tasks, there are sonnet tasks, there are haiku tasks, and like, if you choose the wrong thing, my biggest problem with AI is when I ask it to do a very direct, simple thing, which is like, hey, equivalent to, tell me what the tokens are, the change for the alert on which elements when it's an info, error, or success message. That is a mechanical task. And suddenly, like, AI's like, well, but the focus order or the heading to the description might be inverted, and you might want to start thinking about the motion when this thing slides in from. I'm like, I didn't ask that question. Yeah. Like, you're in a different space, but they're all relevant questions. And so timing, the depth, the duration I want to spend to answer certain things based on the workflow that I'm in. And if it's me, I typically have like 3 or 4 Claude windows open running simultaneous tasks, and that can get a little bit chaotic mentally too. I can empathize, like, that each person approaches those conversations in different ways and needs different things out of their tools, and wants to go at intentionally different speeds or different depths or different durations to solve a problem. And to me, that's okay. I think the problem that my tools are trying to solve is, every time something changes in Figma across an entire Figma file, how do we signal that change in a very precise way immediately?
Yep.
because that's what agents are going to want. They're not going to want to hunt and peck and inspect via MCP all these tiny nodes and like
Yeah.
do all this differentiation across 100K of JSON data. They're going to
Yeah.
want to know that for warning, we just changed the yellow token to be one level shade lower.
Yeah.
That's all it needs to know.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise. It's using the right tools for the job. And also, in the case of the weird and inventive and non-deterministic one, trying to corral it into slapping it on the wrist is like, please don't go here. Please don't rock that boat. This is math territory. Stay
Yeah.
out of this. But also, I kind of appreciate your perspective on this, but just not right now. Like, I think that there's a lot to the UX of how we're all interfacing with these things. But I think that like as quickly as possible, and this is like a very weird place, a very weird thing to say, I think, is that I have seen so much value in like a consolidated like window. This simultaneously like excites me and scares me, like so many things about AI, is I'm like, I like having this single point of entry or the single place where I'm communicating with something and it's all connected and it's just these things are like trickling out. They're being woven in together and coming back to me through the same thing. I'm like, that feels good. That feels natural.
It feels great.
That feels amazing. But at the same time, like that, does that mean, oh, these other things don't matter anymore? Kind of far from it. It's like we, in any case, we're able to just like kind of have this command center view that historically for my brain at least would just short circuit me and I'd be like, wait, what the hell was I trying to do? And so now I'm able to just like stay in the place where it's just like do this and do like the 7 chores that are around it, including writing a bunch of non-deterministic or deterministic code, and then let's chat when that's in place. And then we can kind of I don't know. There's really something to it, but like experientially, as someone who's been using a computer for nearly my entire life, and I'm sure you're in a similar boat, it's like this feels like a pretty radical overhaul of how we talk to computers.
Yeah, and it requires adaptability and humility to go through periods of change that are really uncomfortable. And yeah, it makes me really uncomfortable. I yell at Claude when it's taken like 5 minutes to do like a stupid mechanical thing. But also I appreciate that today I got a ticket for like part of the work that I do now is creating a schema that the multiple platforms all have as a data structure to implement their components. And the fact that it needs to be unbiased across platforms, and Figma is essentially a fourth language to web, iOS, and Android. And I got a ticket today. We had just finished a big chunk of layout schema work. And we got through absolute positioning, and we're using terms like start and end instead of left and right. And Figma's constraints model is left behind in its translation. But somebody on working on iOS was like, what's the deal? Is this Figma bias? They're always like skeptical because of where we're starting from with some of our ideas. The cross-axis alignment property on iOS is center by default. And I'm like, I haven't built something in iOS ever. Like, I'm a web guy.
Yeah.
I could have asked AI that, but that was like on the very long tail of properties. And so that's still that bias crept in, that I'm even that far on an edge of cross-platform relationships helps me continue to learn. That's really uncomfortable for someone to call me out when we have a skill and it has criteria and gates it runs through to unbiased decisions per platform or across platforms. Like we run our architectural decision records through that skill. We missed one. It's leaky. It happens.
Well, yeah, because you're using it as an opportunity to expand your horizons and to learn and to like there's all sorts of stuff to, if you're an interested person, if you're a curious person, these things are just curiosity amplifiers where it's just like, oh, tell me more about this, or here's what's that weird edge case that slips between the cracks of cross-platform stuff. Hell, like, yeah, we've done a bunch of cross-platform systems over the year, but like I would never consider myself to know a lot of the inner plumbing of it. We're often just collaborating with the native developers, and it's like, hey, what shape do you need this stuff in kind of thing, right? So no doubt you're able to get a lot closer than you
Yeah.
ever did.
I would have never imagined 2 years ago that we'd be generating specifications that live outside of any tool, including Figma, and that we can change them predictably, and they're unbiased across platforms, and they're, as far as the design intent that we can think of trying to convey through them, complete. Okay, behavior, accessibility, motion, those are new green territory for us to do. But like the stuff that we've always been doing, I'm running out of challenges, and that's kind
Yeah.
of fun.
Yeah.
There's like a data structure that can house all that stuff.
You're just the right person to do that work. I'm really excited. What does this look like for you as like this as like a product and you as a person creating that? Like what does that look like from how you're situated or organized?
Well, the tool that I'm creating is a natural next step from the Specs plugin that I did 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And what the Specs plugin does is it evaluates a Figma asset and generates its anatomy, its properties, its layout variation, its essentially visual variation across various configurable properties and so on, and creates inventories of styles and that kind of stuff. But it tries to derive everything that it can out of a Figma component. And so as Figma's gotten better, but slowly, like Figma's model of data that it can use to ascribe design intent to a component is moving too slow, but it's still moving. But really shifting from presenting it on a canvas to presenting it in a structured data form that an agent's going to be able to consume really fast. I was inspired like a year and a half ago when somebody said, I took a screenshot of your canvas specs and gave the screenshot to AI to build the component. I was like, oh my God, they're like evaluating an image that has all the visual specs. And I was like, that is not the way to do this. So I have sort of fortified the tool. It still works as a plugin, but now it works on the command line too, and it will fetch your Figma file and then process the components that you want it to process. You set it up one time to say, process these 50, but not these 200 other things that are cruft in the file. And then you can redo it like in less than 60 seconds once a day or once an hour, like however often you want to do it. And so you have all the data now. And so to me, that kind of repetition is really interesting to the consumption of those decisions by the engineers and the agentic systems and workflows that they're building. Two other things it's having me think about is, well, what kind of format are agents and humans going to want to have to solve different tasks? So the kinds of things I'm working on now are, first, additional things that Figma can't carry. Figma's really good at visual, really good or fairly good at properties, but incomplete, somewhat good at layout structure. Nobody uses its motion, nobody uses its behavior, and it's incapable of accessibility. So if you think about all those attributes, Figma is varyingly good at those things. And so now that like I have this blog post in my head, like living on the edge of Figma, what do you do about the things that Figma does not as well or poorly or not at all? And how do you merge those ideas with everything you can derive from Figma into what might be not one document, but an interconnected set of assets? And what shape does that need to take for someone building a React component? How about a contract that you can auto-generate of the prop types? 100%. You don't need an agent to derive that. You can produce that. How about a Tailwind-based set of styles ascribed to Tailwind's philosophy of how to build class names and how to have that work? You can generate that. How about a component MD file that has prop tables and other characteristics and layout in markdown form that a human can read too? Yeah, you can generate that. And so there's a lot of different things you can project from Figma into shapes that are further along and closer to the shape that some consumer on iOS or Android or wherever is going to want that stuff to be shaped as. And so I'm thinking about additional concerns like accessibility to behavior and motion. I'm thinking about how to project things into the shape that the consumer wants, human or agent or both. And how to version those things. And ultimately, like people want to get rid of Figma. I'm really frustrated when I hear people be like, we should ditch Figma and go into prototypes. And I totally believe in prototypes. You and I have spent a lot of our careers trying to figure out how to inject prototyping into the design process off the static canvas. But there's the baby and bathwater of it all. Because what is Figma awesome at? It's a strongly typed visual database of all your design intent for certain categories of design intent. It is awesome. And until you have a better tool to serve as a database of a lot of those tool choices, why would you throw that away? Why wouldn't you broaden your tool set to solve more problems in interconnected ways rather than throwing out the tool set actually fits many scenarios really, really well, just because it doesn't fit other scenarios? That's, to me, short-sighted.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think about the relationship of Figma to other tools and how to carry the design intent in a way, particularly, again, because I'm cross-platform. If I was just building a React catalog, oh my gosh, I'd just be working in straight code the whole time. There's no reason to abstract the design ideas. But when you're building across at least 5 outputs, web, like say a React, iOS, Android, prototyping toolkit, basically web, that has a far more lightweight package and includes a lot of experimental stuff, plus the Figma library, that's 5 different libraries you're publishing. You got to have your design intent separate from those things, as opposed to thinking that AI is going to put all of those things together without any hallucination or anything. So that's where I'm working, and that's sort of where the things I build fit.
You kind of almost implicitly told your own journey of like thinking about, yes, Figma is the source of truth, and then it like kind of goes downstream and it's this direction. That's the workflow, right? What you described is like, this is kind of doesn't have it all. It's covering some of this stuff, covering other stuff imperfectly or poorly. And then this other stuff is absent and in certain respects can never be present because of just the literal DNA of what the thing is. So the Figma source of truth camp, I think, is having a hard time right now, or the people that are like used to this stuff like only going in this direction. Now all of a sudden you have other ways of doing this. And I think that this is one of the other things that we're having a really hard time understanding in this moment, is the idea of like pluralism or plurality as just like, here are different groups of human beings that are organized in different ways, that have those different cultures, again, rigid, flexible, all of that stuff. For that React only company or that place that doesn't have like a full-time staff designer, it's like, well, here's the shape of a toolkit. If you're in a place where there's like dozens upon hundreds upon thousands of people like using these tools, probably doesn't make a sense to throw the baby out with the bathwater, like you said, just like burn it all down and jump into the brave unknown. But for like other places, they have a different shape. And what if different human beings have different needs, and we need to be able to evaluate the tools and technologies that we reach for to serve the problems for the specific shape and configuration of people that we're working with? What if that one right way of doing things was never really actually the right?
There's never one right way, because of all the different constraints and dimensions of how people and organizations are different. And so, like, does Figma fit for everybody? No. But like, should product designers and system designers use the same tools and solve all their problems with the same set of steps? Oh my God, no. No. So when a VP like starts saying everyone should be using prototyping for everything, you are really going to start handcuffing a lot of people that solve problems with better tools that they already used, and potentially put constraints on ways of doing things that are going to erode rather than create value.
And it really, what it comes down to is, I think, like a real reckoning with, I think there have been dynamics at play that make me sad over the course of maybe the last decade or so, where I've seen product designer roles kind of increasingly just live entirely inside of the walls of Figma. And now it's like, it is like, that was never the case, but that's what happened. That's like what ended up happening. And so in many respects, it's like the reintroduction of like, hey, there's actually like a bunch of things that you can do. You could just remember Post-it notes and remember, like all of these other kind of fun things that weren't just living in an artboard somewhere. Like it's like there were different activities that we would do, and then it just like all kind of just got centralized, and now it's like I think that a decentralization is happening, and I think that like for Figma's own sake, I think that they were really trying to do everything they could to like get people into their world
Yeah,
as a
I
business does. And now
think
it's
it's
like, oh yeah, like all this shit needs to play with each other. All of this shit needs to be compatible with one another. We actually like have no choice but to like work with and be connected
yeah.
to one another.
I mean, that's a real testament to Figma's point of view. And God, if they turned it off, I can't imagine the backlash. But Figma is a really open environment. The plugin API, the REST API, people build all sorts of tools on top of it. They interchange data, and I was shocked when somebody said, yeah, we created a backdoor into Figma's plugin API through Claude to just connect through whatever the browser socket something or other it was. I was like, oh my God, what's Figma going to think of that? Are they going to turn it off? But they didn't. So there's an inherent openness to those things, despite the fact that, yeah, it's already a super complicated product. And for them to continue glomming on more and more super complicated stuff, they're at the long tail of features now, as opposed to the core cases. Like, I don't know where they go, but a credit to them for remaining so open and having such a good relationship and trying to help people solve problems.
Yeah. And I think it's testament to what really any tool needs to do these days. And you're seeing just a whole new generation of stuff being born. And I think that the more people, the old mechanics of like, let's get people in here, we built, a better light bulb over here, and we're going to like protect it. It's like you really need to be thinking in terms of a broader ecosystem and interconnectedness out of default.
The old companies that sort of the dead companies behind us, I'm thinking like Envision, I'm thinking AOL, like they're walled gardens, like they weren't interconnected, and that was their downfall.
It's, at a more existential level, perhaps it's the introduction of this stuff that is ultimately the manifestation of the old Stewart Brand information wants to be free. And that technically happened with the web and with the open web, but also it's like there's still kind of these like little islands, and there some things, and now because we can just like connect everything together so much more and so much faster, that the incentives for cooperation and collaboration suddenly become a lot more urgent. To live in our own island, to compete, to say no, this is mine, versus more of like a sharing attitude. I don't know. It's like very, very interesting, but it's like it's clear that the pace of technology is facilitating something that allows things to get out faster than they did before. And I think that really is going to shape how human beings operate, and what's value, right? Just like you were talking about your Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like, what mode will yield more success? And obviously it's going to be like a balance, but like as time goes on, I feel like it's harder and harder to be like this is like the one right way of doing things, or we can push all the other out. This world is getting smaller and faster and more interconnected by the day.
I'm curious, like, to throw it back to you, because I think about these things as a consultant, as someone who has thought about and written about and taught a lot of people about design systems. The AI has encoded so much of not just all the stuff you and I have written, but like all this knowledge about how design systems work, that it's kind of a threat to us as knowledgeable experts in a way. And the value of the ideas that I have now dispersed into these models that can just convey those things without provenance, attribution, whatever. I'm curious how you think about the role those systems have as you're designer or engineer is working and they need something alongside them to guide them, uh, versus the role that we continue to play, at least for some unclear period of time. Like, do you think about that?
Absolutely. But it's like that gets at like, well, why are you building the tools that you're building, right? Is to continue to.
I'm driven to share. Like, I don't
Yeah.
charge for my writing. I charge enough for the tools to make it so that I can justify working on them, but I'm not making massive profits out of them. Like, they're justifying the work.
And that gets to the rub. And I think that this is the moment in time that's unfortunately being laid bare, which is just like capitalism in general, is ultimately like the weak link in all of this, because I think that a lot of people have the strong desire to share, to express themselves, and to want to help and do things. And we're often prevented from doing those things because we got to freaking eat. We got to feed our families, and we're all trying to find stability. And then that ends up being like, yes, I have this thing called intellectual property that I need to hold on to and hoard because that's the thing that feeds my family. And it's like a very hard place to be, because it's like we ultimately, it's like, well, what's that IP for? Oh, it's to help people. Well, what if we just get to the helping people part? And like the more that people get helped, right, the more that stuff scales, the better off everybody is. And if everyone was given permission to just operate that way, guess how much better we'd be. So it's like it gets in the way of what those dynamics of just like capitalism do, I think, is ultimately says, I need to be very mindful about how much I share, and like where's the threshold and what's the thing, and how much do I hold back. And I don't like that. I don't like that dynamic whatsoever. It's like I just want to feed my family, make sure that they're stable, and I want that for every human being on the planet. And so it gets to the point of like, I don't want to I want to be able to share freely. I want to be able to share with reckless abandon. I want to help people and maximize that. And that's ultimately a better world than me with a bunch of money. I just want enough to be stable and feed my family.
I think, I can identify with a lot of what you're describing. And I think about perhaps less directly value that I can impart, and the value that hopefully I play my little small role in the community to build some tools and write some blog posts and help people learn and stuff. But like, I remember you made me think about also like what you don't disclose, or you alluded to that boundary. And Jared Spool, who's been in our space for a while and run conferences and was kind enough to invite me to some of his conferences. And I gave a talk, and I talked to him beforehand. I was like, I hate giving talks. I was like, I literally wish I could never give a conference talk. I love giving workshops because of the interaction and the interplay between the smaller group of learners and your ability to connect and see the change that you're creating with them. Yeah. But with talks, it feels so detached. And I was like, but I have so much to say and I want to fit it all in. And he goes, don't fit it all in. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, deliberately omit things, remove, and be pretty ruthless with what you remove. And I said, well, why would you do that? And he goes, well, first of all, you have like a time limit, and you have a clarity limit and an endurance limit of the audience and all that. And he goes, but you also have the ability to, like, they're going to ask questions on the edge of what you presented. You're going to seem really intelligent when you have the answer already locked and loaded to give them to the question, just because you didn't sort of cross that boundary in your talk. And that gets at some of the value that I'm thinking about around the blog post you write, the tools you make, is really, I've been able to then parlay that into a sufficient amount of credibility and reputation so that people pay me to help their organizations. And so the humans really aren't paying me, the corporate entities are paying me. And I like that distinction.
Yep. And that dynamic is what we've been through, and that I think continues to be a way. It's like we're able to it feels kind of like, well, it feels kind of like patronage, right? Where, in the days of yore, where it's like, all right, I'm the Pope, I'm going to give you some money to paint the ceiling, and off you go. And in a lot of respects, I think that's like what the kind of work that we've historically done is kind of feels a bit like that, where it's like, I'm going to be doing this work that is for the greater good, but also like, there's a way of underwriting that a little bit. And I think that's interesting. I do think that there's like a lot more opportunity now for more people. I've never really liked being put on a pedestal. I think that the both of us, we've always appreciated the little hat tip here and there. That recognition, I think, is something that all humans desire and crave. And it's important to keep that in check and not have that turn into like ego fest. Everybody just wants their work to be valued, right? And more
100%.
people can do that. And that's always been a frustrating thing is I'm sure you've gotten this question, right? It's like, oh, like how did you like get to the point where you're at, or how are you like doing this stuff? And it's like, well, it's through you writing post after post after post and doing it just kind of lather, rinse, repeat of this process of you just share, and then you share again, and then you share again, and then you share again. You get excited about things, you learn things, you put things out, and you do it not necessarily to first and foremost land a client that could then help justify doing more of it. You do it first and foremost because you're compelled to, right? Or do you feel that way? Like,
I think so. I think that there is legitimacy to the grind and the consistency, but also to finding your voice and being able to understand and feel confident in your own voice. Like you and I have very different voices, but I think they're both really valuable and they contribute to a greater whole of how people think about these things in really productive ways. And I get far more energy when somebody just mentions something from a post that I read, or like today, someone submitted a bug report for my tool. And I'm like, that makes me feel like what I did mattered. And when you feel like what you're doing matters and you're making a difference, I run towards those things and it inspires me to do more. It's not because I want to be the coolest conference talk person. I don't want to like show myself on like me on stage. It's not about being on stage. It's about and I find value conveyed and when I feel that, like what I do matters.
That's beautiful. What advice would you have to have more people follow that instinct?
I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way. What I try to do with my writing, for example, is find the distinct idea that I feel like hasn't been shared before, or a particular point of view about an idea that hasn't been shared before, but also then couch it in a real world story. And you could say, well, okay, so you have a formula for writing your posts. Yeah, because I think it works, because most of my posts begin with a 3 to 5 paragraph hook that is about me in some silly meeting and having some aha moment or reacting to some collaborator in a positive or negative way, or and that kind of realness then can lead into like the point of value or the understanding of the idea that you have, and being able to describe that. So it connects emotionally. I try to connect emotionally with the reader through my own voice, and the way that I sometimes have really long sentences, or sometimes I have like really short sentences that like have a really direct phrase or something like that, because that's actually how I'm feeling. That's what's going on in my head. Yeah. And so being able to discover that through writing, like if you read my book from 2009, you'd be like, oh my God, you're so loquacious. And I still am way too wordy with the stuff that I write at times, but like being able to do through practice, find my own voice and find that. And that gave a platform for people to soak up the ideas, I think.
Yeah.
And so if I was to give advice around using writing and blogging as, don't write the system success story post. I literally saved them in a folder called System Success Stories, and they describe how people created their token libraries and then created their component libraries, and now they have a token infused catalog of components that is their design system. That's the story that everybody tells. Instead, like what narrower thing, what more specific thing is going to help us move our corpus of community knowledge that much further, move that boundary out more, talk about how to use easing, like a motion design token thing with easing and springs and choreography. That's what I need to read, man. There's not enough stuff on that. So let's push the boundary.
Yeah. I love it. We're increasingly going to be like latching onto that. So all to say is just like people are here, they're living, so many people are just constantly looking over their shoulders. Like, would this make Nathan Curtis proud or whatever? Like, am I doing this right? Yes or no?
I don't think
it's like,
anybody's thinking that.
I think so. I could prove you wrong there. But I do think that like there's a lot of second guessing. There's like a lot of like, oh shit, like I couldn't possibly write because this person's already written it better than I could, and so on and so forth. So it's just like, just know that just by way of you having a unique experience on Earth, you have valuable things that are worth sharing. I don't know. Call me biased. Call me old fashioned.
We all are biased. You are old fashioned. What's next?
Like, because this is a really strange moment. And so it's difficult to predict the future with any degree of like, oh, yeah, I could see where this is going. But like, if we are to be having this conversation 3 years from now, and I were to say, like, what surprised you? What would you say?
I would be really surprised if in 3 years, the only way that people describe their components was in a Markdown file. I would be really surprised. I would be really surprised if in 3 years, design system component catalogs included only 40 quote unquote core components made by only a select group of central people. Like, I expect instead richer descriptions of components that span a variety of formats to describe them and combine them in those formats and data in interesting ways. And I expect our design systems to spread into many different people, making many different classifications of things that we have only danced around today beyond components. Like I'm calling them, there's a class of things I'm working on called compositions. I expect page views, templates, patterns, and actually patterns beyond just a chunk of the UI that's well styled with tokens, like patterns of behavior, patterns of sequences, patterns of information architecture, patterns of content, like all those different kinds of recurring things. I expect systems to have a much richer array of concerns or classes of problems that it solves and enables people to reuse. And so I'd be really surprised if systems look as quote unquote simple as they look today. I hope they're not.
What do you think about a lot of like the generative UI stuff and just like more ephemeral stuff and just the fact that we historically have been the gatekeepers and tastemakers for how a thing an experience emerges onto a screen and how people move through it, and they're beholden to our world. What happens when that is no longer the case? The people
Wait, who is they and what world are you talking about?
I'm talking about a world where I'm like, this page that has 17 different sections on it and 14 columns of text and the 3 tooltip overlays and 7 modal windows that's
a good page, Brad. That is nice. You got a lot going on.
And I'm just like, how about I just want you to look like this from now on? And it does it.
I'm not sure. I feel like taste is a vague and abstract thing. Mm-hmm. I think people taste through descriptive terms and let's call it verbal prose, whatever, that leaves lots of gaps and is non-specific. And I think the human's ability not just to fill those gaps with instinctual choices, but also call out those gaps and ask them to be filled. Like, Brad, what is they? What is the world? Like you suddenly described in a much richer way this page with all these bells and whistles and tooltip overlay something or others. Suddenly that our ability to speak in a more structured way and think about how we verbalize our ideas, I think is going to have to improve a lot. I don't want to live in a world where AI fills those gaps for me without me understanding how they're being filled and being able to perceive what those gaps are that it filled. I don't want to live in that space. Dan Brown, my former business partner, and I 10 to 12 years ago had this moment where we were asking our staffs can you please write your emails and like Slack comms with better structure? Can you think about like the clarity of the simple and sort of algorithmic stuff that you write? Like we didn't say it in that kind of flat and really boring tone, but we wanted to help people describe what they needed in clearer terms so they could communicate more clearly.
Yeah.
And like a year ago, when I started doing architectural decision records for the first time, and I started having AI scaffold them and then fill in a lot of the blanks of them. And then I would know where the blanks are that I needed to nuance about them and add more clarity and so on. Suddenly, that shell and that template, that Mad Lib, became so visible to me that I wanted so many design conversations to, can you just make it like an architectural decision record? Tell me the context, tell me the problem, tell me the alternative to the solution, tell me what the recommended solution is, tell me what the consequences are, and help us make a decision. Like suddenly, all these design meetings that should have been 5 minutes long are still an hour long because they don't have that sort of structure embedded into them. And like, I like that AI is helping us realize and communicate stronger with that structure. And I don't want to give that up with a bunch of ephemeral, verbalized, taste-like cues of, let's make it more spacious. What the hell does that mean? Like, let's talk about visual contrast. Let's talk about the negative space. Let's talk about, let's start weaving in more deliberate terminology and being smarter about how we describe our wants and needs. Is that where you want to go?
No, I think that's fascinating because I think like what you're describing is like you appreciate a more structured language, and that gives you clarity and helps you understand things, in that when information comes at you and you're able to transmit it using that structure, it reaps good results.
But again, I have to approach this with humility. I remember in like around 2004 when I was working at Nextel, which merged with Sprint and eventually dissolved into a non-telecom. But I was working with this person who was in charge of the content design team. I was describing an information architecture challenge. And at the end, she just goes, "You're like talking to a lawyer." And I was like, I'm not sure that's a compliment.
But I think that's it though. It's like you are wired in a way that you prefer things to be in a certain way and to be ordered in a certain way, and that's
I value them that way.
You value them that way, right?
Yeah.
And then there's other people who are like, give me the spacious vibes, man. What I think is really interesting about this moment, and when we talk about the empowerment, not just of designers and developers and how they're now interacting with and shaping digital experiences, but the users of the software. It's like, you remember like the user style sheets and stuff, right? And the ability to just kind of provide those site level overrides and those things. I think that the fact that we could now just be like, I freaking hate doing my taxes, and like, but present it to me as a game and I'll be into it. I'll do it, or whatever. I know I've blown your mind here, but it's like,
I would love to do my taxes as a game, Brad. I'm all in.
You could do that now. You could literally do that now. And the thing is that behind the scenes is everything that you're saying. And back to our conversation earlier about like deterministic, non-deterministic. It's like the interface of this stuff, I think, is like a lot squishier, fuzzier, more open-ended, that I don't think that like a lot of that like sameness or structure needs to be inflicted on everybody. It's kind of one of those like, oh, maybe here's some like smart defaults, but like you could kind of choose your own adventure. But 100%. Ultimately that handshake, however the person is experiencing with it or interfacing with the computer, so long as it hits that API or that database a certain way and the things get captured in a certain way, it's like, well, who gives a crap if it looked like a weird MySpace page versus something that's just looks like a you get the idea, right? It's like we can have these like hyper personalized UIs, so it's like, what does that mean for design systems?
Even for one person, it depends on the moment and the need, because should you be delivering a strict schema for all your accessibility requirements for every component, where everything about accessibility is compartmentalized into very concrete, explicit properties and hierarchies? No way. We are nowhere close to that. But could we do focus order if we already know the names of all the layers? Maybe we could do that. So even like thinking about the level of structure that fits the task, is fit to purpose effectively.
Yep.
And a lot of those things may long live in markdown files because it is good enough, but other things aren't. And that's okay.
I think it's good. It's like there's this almost kind of like there's like a rigid structure, but then there's this kind of like warm kind of weird fuzzy layer wrapper to it all that's like looser, more pliable. And it's these things kind of like traveling together that can end up helping tell a richer story, or it's like help people get extract the good bits from this new crop of technology while still making good use of the hard-earned structure and deterministic stuff that has got us this far.
I mean, that's a trick you and I play, I assume, as consultants, is people get grounded into their sides of black and white. And often, let's just unlock that to travel the expanse of gray and understand we're going to end up in fuchsia. So like, how do you sort of break down that strictness, that rigidness we were talking about before to land the plane?
Is there one thing that you've learned about, like, you bring with you this deep store of experience and expertise, like born over all of these different engagements? Like, is there one thing that helps you kind of lock into their specific stew? Like or is it like really just like you have no choice but to like do the hard work of just like getting in and closer and having a shitload of different conversations with a bunch of people, and then that becomes known? Or do you like kind of come in and be like, hey, what makes you weird?
Yeah, like this comes from a position of privilege, I think, but I'm at the point in my career where the choice to decline engaging is the first choice to consider. When you see an opportunity, whether it's with a teammate or a potential collaborator in your current job, or whether to switch jobs or take on a new client, of saying like, I can't, or I shouldn't, I'm not going to grow as fast taking this opportunity relative to that opportunity, and being able to say no. So I think saying no, but also as you start to engage with somebody, the other thing is the early signals that you can perceive to understand the terms of engagement. And I mean, almost literally one of them being how a company chooses to engage with you, like to form a contract, to form the how they're going to pay you, and how easy they're going to make that. Because the best clients make that like effortless. Like the fact that they realize how to get the best value out of a consultant is to not have them focus on communicating with procurement. That's smart. There's just business value out of that. And there are sort of, that's a microcosm of how like just design system collaboration with partner teams or product groups trying to express design ideas. Like there are those kinds of implicit contracts, and you could call them vibes, but like to me, it's more how are we going, what are our terms of behavior, and how are we going to engage with each other? And I am drawn to the people where those terms are match my own value system and way to working.
If they're on fire in the process of just getting you in the door, kind of red flags. But if they're like, we know we're bringing you in here for these reasons, and we can kind of co-create like how you're going to be there.
Yeah, or if they're a government entity and this is like top secret clearance stuff, I get why you're being opaque. I'm not cleared yet. But most of this stuff isn't nuclear bombs and terrorist attacks. I mean, most of this stuff is like design and screen so somebody can like buy a plane ticket, or, you know, purchase a wine cooler. I don't know, something silly like that.
That's your real dream, is to open your own wine cooler business?
No, my real dream is to, I'm frankly, this is going to sound stupid. I feel like I'm living my dream. I wouldn't change my career for anything. Like I've loved the journey I've taken, and I hope I get to do these silly puzzle solving challenges for another few years before I have to kick it.
Because there's, I think, kind of a new generation of people getting into this kind of work now. And we've kind of talked about that. And you talked about, you know, the privileged position of being able to like turn down gigs. Like what advice would you have for this kind of new generation of people who are getting into to this world or setting out on their own to help people and places get better design systems in place.
The things I find myself telling those that I advise often are things like run towards the stuff that's going to get you the most energy. Think about the opportunity cost relative to other things that you could do instead, and how you're balancing those trade-offs. Also, I'm incredibly impatient. Don't waste your time. If there's a dead end or a thing isn't working out, life is too short to just coast along and cope with it and not create something that you're proud of or create the next iterating version of yourself that is going to be where you want to end up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think
So don't waste
I
the
think
time.
that's well said. I think that's well said. Like following your energy, I think that a lot of people think that this line of work, and it's true that like there are certain activities that come with this terrain and there's things that you do, but ultimately it's like, well, do you want to be doing those things? Because if you aren't interested in doing those things, or you're more interested in a specific technical solution. I was just having this conversation with somebody who is like getting into the world of design systems consulting, and they're like looking to get their foot in the door. And it's like they also have like some really interesting philosophies around kind of a specific way of doing this stuff. And they've like thought deeply about it, and it's really impressive. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. Do you want to be out there sharing this solution? Or are you more getting into design system consulting, which is you're kind of showing up going, what's the problem? And even if you have this specific solution burning a hole in your pocket, you kind of got to know when that's appropriate or when that isn't, because like that might not be what they want or need, or I don't know. So it's like there's this kind of like vague, like really knowing kind of why you're running towards the world of design systems consultancy, I guess, versus
Well,
like I'm trying to do a very specific type of project.
I remember you made me think about a related that I had with Lou Rosenfeld from Rosenfeld Media,
Love
the publisher. And he wrote the book, Information Architecture for the World Wide Web, which is why you and I are having this conversation, which led me to information architecture, which led me through into design systems. And he gave me advice once before I wrote Modular Web Design, and he said, blog first. To be able to describe problems and solutions, to describe the experiences you have and the beliefs you hold and the principles you abide by, break it down, man. Like start talking about those different ideas and see if that kind of stuff is going to come together into a book. And you know what I did? I was like, nah, I'm going to just write the book. And it was too long, too dense. Like, it was not a ending that I should have built more to that. And I feel like design systems can feel the same way. You look at somebody else's book or you look at somebody else's system, and it's this rich array of all these different things, and it's scaled to solve all these problems. But like if you're starting from zero, or if you're starting from a much smaller place, you got to figure out the steps and how those steps are going to start fitting together into a bigger whole. Yep. That's what capital D, capital S design system is really going to feel like you experiencing over time. And it's not going to happen overnight. And every once in a while, I've only had one that went truly sideways and failed. And it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. I tried to stop maybe I shouldn't tell the story. Like, have I told you this? Like, it was
I don't know.
About 3 months in, and the front end developer still on my team didn't have access to GitHub. And then it was about 5 months in, and I was like, listen, UX director, this isn't going to work. Like your culture is like rejecting all of its antibodies are like attacking this and all sorts of other stuff too. Kept paying. I was like, stop paying us, fire us. Like this is not working. Month 4, month 5, month 6. And then the UX director, the engineering director, and the product VP all got fired. Like it was such a bigger cultural problem.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we weren't left holding any bag. Like they were like, this wasn't your fault. It was a bigger thing. But like sometimes the culture, sometimes the conditions that you find yourself in don't afford you to the potential to actually succeed and create value. Yeah. And hopefully you can short circuit it before it wastes everybody's time.
Yeah. That's a telling tale what's hard though is that a lot of times that doesn't become apparent until hindsight, until you're like on the other end of it, you're like, "Ooh." But I do think that back to your advice earlier, which is sound, which is like follow things that like energize you or interest you. You do need to subject yourself to a bit of hard or discomfort or like
Mhm.
whatever. Even if you're not like a political person, you got to like play that game. Even if you're kind of more in the weeds, or you got to get in there, you got to get that contract, you got to like do all of like that stuff that might not be your wheelhouse. That's not the main thing that's exciting you, but it's like it's a part of the game. And I think that that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do because it could be it could that stuff can consume you, and then you find yourself totally on a different path than
Yeah.
the thing that is exciting. So it's like checking in with yourself. It's like being very intentional with that stuff. Yes, I know that I'm going through all this rigmarole so that we could do the fun stuff or whatever, but some people just kind of get pulled by a fast moving current at the expense of their own interests and enthusiasms and curiosities. So it's like it's just like a weird thing that you need to contend with, and you really have to like fight for and advocate for the things that are exciting to you. Or if you can't find that in a gig, which has certainly been the case for me, I'd love to hear if that's the case for you. But it's like to go, okay, this ain't the thing that is like hitting all my buttons, but this little nugget here.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was gonna find this to be interesting, but like sometimes it's like the relationship between two people. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, this is gonna be like my fun for this gig. This is going to be my fun for the project that I'm going to be excited about working on, even if everything else is like kind of bland.
Yeah, I really appreciate some of the leaders I've been brought in to help establish a design system in their orgs and the degree to which they enable like the people that are gelling to find their way and form their stuff, even if it's not necessarily the direction that they expected things to go in, and they sort of
Yeah.
wind in other directions and end up in other places, but that it still ends up creating sufficient value in the general direction that they expected it to go, but they're hands off. Like I really have been blessed to have some of those. And I mean, like I even recall like the project we worked on kind of together recently where I wasn't available, but it also wasn't the ideal project for me. But I was able to say, I am available for this. And would it help me or help you for me to just participate like X and Y? Like, do you want me to hang around and give some input and be a little bit more distant from everything? And I think it, for the very limited amount I was able to participate, created a little bit of a difference, but it
Yeah.
still wasn't necessarily a cookie cutter thing. And that
Yep.
was okay. I
Yeah.
wasn't in charge. I wasn't tasked with any particular domain, but that's fine. Like I'm still creating a bit of value, as it were.
Yeah. And you did. You absolutely did. But it is good. It's like there's yeah, here's the thing that like I've shaped for myself, my offering, my normal thing, or here's like the way I'd prefer to help. And yet there's still the sure, I'll help you load this couch into a moving truck or something. It's like not something you're doing every day, but you could still be helpful in just weird, varied ways. And I've enjoyed like being that like amorphous puzzle piece for
Hmm.
different places. It's like, what are you struggling with? Do you need a lot of help, a little bit of help? Like weird kind of helps.
Maybe that's another piece of advice too, is how can you put yourself in such a diverse and rapidly changing array of relationships and in contexts so that you can pick up all the patterns. Like part of what you get when you consult with me is like I've worked on over 100 design systems. I've seen and I can feel the nuance of the boundaries and patterns and cultures and like feature sets and architectures and all that kind of stuff. And so like I come equipped with that, but that's also because like I was drawn to work with Brad and these other few people, even though I couldn't draw, I still learned and observed and saw how they interacted and how they leveraged their own strengths and all that kind of stuff. And putting myself in a position to be able to bounce between those things, I think also really helped, as
Yeah.
opposed to be in one place, learning one way with a few collaborators for a long time. That
Yeah.
for me wouldn't have been good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good to know thyself because you get a
Yeah.
lot of like depth and rich knowledge from going deep and with like a singular goal. And then there's also real value in breadth. And so, yeah, just kind of knowing what gives you energy and what feels exciting at that time and moment. I too like the variety and the ability to learn from a bunch of different people all at once. That really is helpful. And I've enjoyed that. And so if that kind of breadth and curiosity for a lot of different kinds of experiences is something that you crave, then well, then consultancy is a pretty damn good way of doing that. But then I also really admire, and I'm sure that you feel the same with the teams that you've worked with. Some of these people have been doing their thing in that same place for like 15 years, and you're like, holy shit. Like,
yeah, but there's a respect to that too. Like some of my
that's what I'm saying.
collaborators,
It's like it's amazing. Like I have like the utmost
yeah,
respect for somebody that's like, this is my job. Like this is
I
what
don't
I
know.
do.
2011 is a long time ago, 15 years. I can't imagine that. But well, actually, I worked with an insurance company. I can imagine 15 years. Like it's also that like in the roles that you choose, you have to know what you're seeking and what you're not. I'm not seeking being the figurehead of the successful system. Like I've worked with some design leads over the years that have worked it for years. And they are the leader that has taken this thing and grown it and scaled it to that thing. You
Yeah.
point to them. They're the hub of all that success. I don't need that.
Yeah.
Like, but I really admire a lot of the people that have made that kind of change within what can be a really chaotic environment.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's the jam. It's not my jam,
Yeah.
but for some, it's definitely the jam.
I think that there's something to that, like longevity in something, in your case, a vast and varied experience, but a longevity nonetheless, that I think is going to also be something we increasingly value in this age where everything is immediate. It's like, oh, when you find out that it's like people have been on this ride for like 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and there's like a lot of reps in there. I think that we're going to suddenly realize that value in those like longer efforts. That's what ultimately breaks through that just hypey, noisy stuff. It's like, nope, we've been focused, we've been doing the work, we've been iterating, we've been improving, we've been like thinking deeply about this and through the lens of a changing landscape over time. All of that rich infrastructure and all of those decisions and all of that agreement and all of that richness that comes with the territory. So
yeah,
here's hoping at least, or we'll all be dead.
Hey man, someday sooner or later.
Oh, that is true. It has been a real pleasure finally getting a chance to like kind of work closer to you, to like see how you operate. It's like, it is really wild to have this similar but totally different style kind of to it. And so it was really, really fun to be able to work together and work a bit closer and get to swap notes and all of that stuff. That was really a treat. And I also just appreciate your longevity through all of this, like the fact that you're able to be here kind of carrying this stuff through and still finding lots of things to be excited about, enthusiastic and interested in. It's like, it's awesome. So I'm glad that you're continuing to have a good time.
Yeah, you too. Don't stop.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, the only other structured question on the show is what music would you like more people to know about?
Oh gosh. I am not a music aficionado.
That's okay.
But actually, you know, like maybe I'll talk a little bit about Frostapalooza. When you put on Frostapalooza in 2024, I believe, in Pittsburgh in September, I was able to go because I live in Ohio, or grew up in Ohio. So I went home and then came back and hung out at your gig and enjoyed the show. But it was amid a time when I was starting to learn how to play the piano and not just learning music. I've never done instruments before. And so I haven't really dove in much to it, but I still occasionally do. And I'm playing the same song over and over. It's called On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter. And it's a pretty solemn piece that once you hear it, it's in like so many movie soundtracks, like Arrival, that it'll sound very familiar. But I don't know. It's like, since I'm learning to play it, it's got an increasing level of sophistication, but it also has very recurring measures and so on. And so it's not necessarily the piece of music, but how it's like helped me on my journey of learning how to play piano, because of how I've been able to layer on the techniques as actually the piece itself becomes more and more complicated as it
Oh,
progresses.
wild.
So it's been a lot of fun. But that, and also the other song was Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, the classical sort of intro of the Smashing Pumpkins double album from '96. So
Oh yeah.
anyway, those are the tunes I'm hearing when I play.
Beautiful. Oh, that beautiful. That's incredible. I'm really excited to listen to that as you describe it, as like, it sounds like as the piece unfolds, it gets more complex, more nuanced, or there's more to it. So it's like starting at closer to like a 101 level and then like ending up in like master's degree territory.
Yeah. It's the Richter piece is pretty straightforward. Like a pianist would be like, I'll read that once and I'll know how to play it. It's not Mary Had a Little Lamb, but it's not Beethoven or Mozart.
Yeah, sure.
But the tone is good. Anyway,
That's amazing. Oh, that's exciting. I'm really excited to know that you're digging into that world, and math, statistics, all of that stuff. I mean, there really is so much correlation between these things, and it is just kind of equal parts art form and technique, and there are rules and structure and rigidity in certain respects, but also not. And there's a really cool game board to play on. So, oh, that's really, really cool. I'm really glad to hear that. I feel like in some small way helping just kind of like poke that fire, poke those embers a little bit. That's awesome. Okay. And then last thing, like, where could people follow along with what you're up to? Where do you hang out? What would you like to point people towards?
I'm mostly posting on LinkedIn and writing on Substack about the specs tools that I've been building, which you can find them on Figma, but also just at specs plugin and the specs repo that I publish stuff through. Find me there and let's chat. Keep sharing ideas.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks everybody for listening. So see you later.
Thanks, Brad.